All right, just a second, folks. If you're watching, in the meantime, if you're
We're live
watching
on YouTube.
we're live on YouTube.
Yep,
Okay,
we're good.
Awesome. All right. Welcome everyone. Boy, do we have a show for you today. We're talking to Bill Inmon. I'm pretty sure you've heard about him, creator, inventor of the data warehouse, and we're going to talk to him about what people are doing wrong these days.
Yeah, we are. So we're really excited to have Bill on. Look, this is just to set the stage. I mean, when I started my career, I can remember reading some of Bill's books, and we base so much of our work on what Bill does. In fact, we all base our work. If you work in data, you owe Bill Inmon a huge debt, because he is really one of the pioneers of the field, the inventor of the data warehouse. We're really thrilled to have him on the show here today. Now, listen, if you are new to the Super Data Brothers show, this is a live show. This is not a pre-recorded conversation with Bill. So I've got questions that I've got queued up to ask, but that's boring. We want to get your questions for Bill, get them into the chat, whether you're watching on LinkedIn, Substack, or YouTube, and we will ask them to Bill. That's how we do around here, is we try to bring, look, think of this less as like a boring IT webinar, and think of it more as like some weird stuff you're watching on Twitch on a Saturday night. Okay, that's the energy we try to bring to this. So let's do that. And of course, if you let us know where you're watching from, we will give you a shout out in the chat. Like Oladameji, welcome. I hope I pronounced your name right. I apologize if I didn't. But welcome back to the show. It's good to have you back here today for this one. Okay, so before we bring Bill on, we got to do one quick thing, and that is thank our sponsor, Good Data. Good Data is the leading embedded analytics and AI vendor on the Gartner Magic Quadrant. When you have a specific experience, a revenue-generating data product that you are trying to build, where just having some generic-ass Power BI dashboard is not going to cut it, you have a specific audience with a specific experience, and you need to deliver for them. That is what Good Data is laser-focused on. So get your complimentary copy of the Magic Quadrant report, last year's Magic Quadrant, at the URL you see on the screen, and check Good Data out. We want to thank them for their sponsorship of today's episode. All right. We got Shachar Meyer. Hi from London. We've already got our first question in, thoughts on Data Vault. So let's bring Bill on now. We won't tease you anymore, and dive into it. Bill, welcome to the Super Data Brothers show.
Thanks. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's believe me, we're thrilled to have you.
Yeah.
For anybody who doesn't know, why don't you give kind of a brief introduction to who you are and your contributions to the data field?
Surely. My name's Bill Inmon. I live in Denver, Colorado. I've been here for a long time. I have been in computers and technology from the very beginning. I wrote my first program in 1965 at a place called White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico. I was going to school there at the time, and from that I worked for many years as a programmer and a database designer and a system designer. And then one day I got frustrated with working for the corporation I was working for, and instead of doing something rational, I went home at evening times and wrote my first book. I'll never forget that I'd never written anything before in my life. When I was in college, I avoided courses where you had to write things. And so I wrote my first book, and I'll never forget, at the end of the book, I was sitting there at the desk, and I thought, I think I should burn this book, because who would want it? I thought, the worst anybody can ever say is this is a pile of junk. And to my great surprise, I had 5 major publishers want to publish my first book, which for somebody that is new to the industry, that's probably never been done before. At any rate, I found out that I loved writing. To date, I've written a large number of books. To my best calculation, we've sold about 1.5 million books wide. And I have the #1 seller in the history of our industry, a book called Building the Data Warehouse. I have to tell you, when I wrote the book, Building the Data Warehouse, it was like all the other books that I wrote. I thought, well, this an interesting book. And I don't know what happened, but something happened and it hit a nerve in the industry. And so it started selling a lot of books. And to date, that book has sold about 500,000 copies. And it's still selling, by the way. It was written originally in 1987. If you can, you guys probably weren't even born by then.
I was 5, Bill.
I was not. I think I was 3. I was 3 years out from being born.
Yeah.
So 1987 was when that book was first written, and it's still selling today. Actually, it's selling an amazing amount yet today. In the meantime, I've written. I started with the notion of data warehouse, but I have expanded greatly since then. One of the things that once upon a time in our industry, all there was structured data. That's all there was. There wasn't really anything else. Today's world, you find there's all kinds of data in today's world. There's structured data, which is still important, by the way, still very important. There's textual data, there's analog data, there's all kinds of image data. And so today, the world of data architecture has expanded greatly from what it once was. And I've been trying to keep track of architecture in today's world. So that's a little bit about myself.
Eric, why don't you run down all the comments we've gotten so far while I try to debug what's wrong with one of our integrations.
Okay. All right. So we've got
technical issues. We have like our best guest ever and everything. Of course, everything's on fire.
Hi, Shachar from London. Hi. Let's see. Service from Munich. Thanks for tuning in. Ali from Pakistan. Welcome. And then Ryan, you almost good try, Ryan. It's Demeji from Calgary.
I did my best. I did my best on that one.
Yep. Roman tuning in. Thanks for tuning, Roman. And then Mehdi saying the legend, and then 1.5 million books, and then just LinkedIn users just saying good morning. I don't know. The integration didn't work, so I don't know what that's.
Yeah, there's the integration with StreamYard's always weird. All right, so Bill, can you kind of paint the picture? Your early career, kind of where were you, and how did you first get involved in this data thing?
I'll tell you, it's a really strange story. But when I was in college, I was a good golfer. Not a great golfer, but a good golfer. My first year out of college, I tried the professional golf tour, the PGA Tour. I found out very quickly that I liked to eat, and I was starving to death as a pro. I was good enough to get in the tournaments, but not good enough to make any money. I did play with some people you might know, a guy named Lee Trevino.
Oh, yeah.
I used to play golf with him on a regular basis. So here I was in a place called Louisiana, Shreveport, Louisiana, and making not even enough money to buy hamburgers on. And so I saw an ad in the newspaper. They were looking for programmers. And I thought, well, when I was in college, I took a couple of courses in programming. Maybe I'll get a job there. And so I went in to Western Electric in Shreveport, Louisiana at the time. And I got a job as a programmer. And then I found out that I really, really liked this computer stuff. And so I started off as a programmer, learning, really being an apprentice, learning what it meant to be a programmer. And then I moved on and became a database designer and then a system designer. And I did some very large systems when I was back in that day and age. And then I wrote my first book, and that changed my life because I've written a lot of books since then. And I've tried to stay abreast of the industry. Whereas structured data is interesting data. We have to really important, really powerful, interesting data. it's hardly the only data that's out there today. And the recent thing that I've been working on is textual data. It amazes me that there is this wealth of value and information in textual data, and people don't pay any attention to it. And in fact, let me relate to you a quick little conversation I had with a gentleman, a professor at University of San Diego, who was head of business value in computers. And I was talking to him about corporations listening to the voice of their customer. I said, gee, corporations ought to be paying attention to what their customers are saying. And he said, this really surprised me. He said, Bill, he says, I've been in this business of talking to corporations about customers and listening to customers. And I can tell you definitively that 90% of the corporations in America pay no attention whatsoever to their customers. Only 10% do. And I said, that can't be. And he said, Bill, I'm telling you, it's the truth. And so I find it really odd that not listening to your customer is like having a pot of gold land on your doorstep, and then you use it to as a door jamb. I mean, wait a minute, guys. There's tremendous value in textual data, and yet very few people pay attention to it. I told the professor in San Diego, I said, gee, I'd really like a list of those companies that do listen to their customers, and because I want to go invest money in them, because those we're going to wake up one day. You guys are too young to probably remember this, but once upon a time, the automobile industry were the makers of automobile in Detroit, and they decided what the marketplace wanted and needed. Well, guess what? They didn't really decide. They didn't understand what the marketplace needed, and suddenly there were people like Volkswagen and Toyota and Honda and people like that coming in, and it was a surprise to them. If the corporations had listened to what their customers were saying, they never would have made some of the mind-boggling poor decisions they made about business. And yet corporations won't. I'll tell you another quick little story, and I'll even mention the name of the corporation, which I normally don't do. Once upon a time, there was an insurance company called AIG, and I was talking to AIG, and I was talking to a gentleman, and I said, gee, how would you like to know what people on the internet are saying about your corporation and your products? And he said, Bill, I don't know if we can do that. I said, why not? And he says, well, because we've made a commitment to big data. We have dedicated $1 billion to big data. I got news for you. You can't even find big data today. Big data was a fad that lasted for about a year. And yet, believe me, AIG, in terms of knowing their customers, would be a better run company today if, in fact, they actually had listened to their customers. So anyway, the whole subject of data, and believe me, when it comes to text, there's a lot more to it than just listening to your customer, although that's very important. Then there is another issue that never gets mentioned, and that's analog data. That there too is a wealth of value tied up in analog data, and nobody looks at it. People don't even think about it. I got to tell you, I see these books out there on data architecture, and I've seen one book on in data architecture that knows the different types of data. Unfortunately, I wrote that book. The other books on data architecture that are out there, they don't even mention the fact that there are other kinds of data. They are swallowed up by the and again, I have nothing against structured data. Structured data is where most business value is tied up, and it's very important data, and we need to manage it well. but it's not the only kind of data that's in the world, and that's not the only place that corporations ought to be looking for business value.
Bill, we have a good question from the audience here. This is from Corinne watching on Substack. She says, what is analog data? So can you give us an example of that?
Sure. Analog data is data that's generated by a machine. And there's lots of machines that are out there that generate data. On my father's ranch in Texas, the railroad ran a line through my father's land many years ago. And they've got this little machine that every time a train goes down the track, the machine automatically counts how many cars there are, the time of day that the event occurred, and then it sends an electronic message back to some computer, and that's how they figure out how to pay my father each year or each month for the rental of his property. So having a machine that sits there and takes readings. Let me give you a quick example that I use. If you were to go to a parking lot for your corporation has got a place where people park their cars. On that parking lot is some kind of camera, security camera. And that security camera sits there and takes a snapshot every 30th of a second. That's the normal rate that those cameras work. And so every 30th of a second, a record is created of what's going on in the parking lot. But there are lots and lots of other ones. They put analog recorders on drones, and one of the interesting uses of that is for example, Walmart will create their drone and go position it over Kmart or some other vendor and count the cars in the parking lot, which, by the way, is a perfectly legal thing to do. I'm not suggesting it's illegal, but you've got a camera sitting on a drone, sitting there looking in the parking lot, taking a look at how many cars are going, which, by the way, is a good indication of how business is going with your competitor. So data that comes from your wristwatch. Your wristwatch creates electronic messages. I have a pacemaker. I'm an old guy. I have a pacemaker. My pacemaker sits there and sends messages to my doctor. So we have these analog messages all over the place.
Great. The a couple more shout outs. Johannes is watching from Norway. Stepan, I guess he's in French, so I'm not sure how to pronounce that in France, but Stepan Heckel says, hello to Bill. I've been honored to host Bill for the French Data Sommelier Talk show a few months ago. Thanks again, Bill. So Lynn Bender watching, saying greetings from Day-to-Day Texas. Good to have you here, Lynn. So Bill, second question, I guess, from the audience here. This is Shachar Meyer asking, if you started your career today from scratch, what would you do?
My North Star would be follow business value, because and that's not a technical answer, by the way. But well, it is. It is and it isn't a technical answer. But the problem with looking at just technology is you're going to be like the 1,000 other engineers that get laid off when engineers get laid off. If you go into a corporation and demonstrate actual hardcore business value, your corporation isn't going to lay you off. And oh, by the way, in terms of getting promotions, that's an easy way to get promotions. So if I were starting my career today and I said, what do I have to think of above and beyond everything else today, I would say, make sure whatever I do, find business value and make sure the corporation understands the business value that I find.
That's very sage wisdom, I think. Here we have a question from Chris Van Dorn, and I think this is a little tongue-in-cheek, but I did want to get your take on it. He says, good evening from the Netherlands. Long shot, but is Ralph Kimball going to join too? So Those of us who remember, there was quite a debate among data practitioners of the Inmon versus Kimball. And I'm curious on that, was there really much of a rivalry personally between you and Ralph? Or was that just something that the rest of us brought into the world?
There was never 1 second of rivalry between myself and Ralph Kimball. When I started hosting my own conferences, the first person I invited was Ralph Kimball. So on a personal basis, there wasn't. Let me give you my take on the Kimball versus Inmon. I say controversy. I'll tell you what it's like. It's like the National Enquirer that you see on the rack in the grocery store. That journalists were looking for some kind of conflict, and somehow Ralph and I ended up there. But on a personal basis, it was all fiction, which makes me never pick up a National Enquirer when I go to the grocery store. But Ralph was answering one question. I was answering another question. And I don't think people understood. We weren't answering the same questions. Ralph was talking about how do you get data quickly into a place where you can analyze and do analytics on the data. So Ralph's intent was speed. My intent was, how do you have believability of data? How do you know that when you get hold of a piece of data that you know what its value is? Now, those questions may sound the same. I guess they do, because they sure got to be confused, but they're not the same thing at all. I can't tell you how many times I've recommended the Kimball approach to people. If all they want to do is get something up and running and do it quick, man, Kimball is the way to go. No question about it. On the other hand, if you want to have believability of data, that's another entirely different question. Then you might ask, so why do we have issue with believability of data? The reason why is that the corporations of the world ended up with this massive amount of different applications. And each application had their own understanding and treatment of data. And it was thought that, well, you could just go to one application and pluck data from there and go to another application and pluck data from there. And you can do that. But you end up adding oranges and apples and bananas together, and you get a really strange answer. Let me give you one quick example that illustrates this. A while back, in the very early days of data warehousing, we did a project for the U.S. Army. And the U.S. Army was asking a simple question: how many tanks do we have? And they asked different portions of the Army, and they got a different answer everywhere they went. Now, wait a minute. We're the Army. We own these tanks. How come we don't know how many tanks we have? Well, there's good reason for it. Because first off, some tanks were in a usable state. Other tanks were in a state of maintenance. So how many tanks do we have that we could use? Now, that's a different question from how many tanks do we have. Another question is, some of the tanks are in Germany. Some of the tanks are in Japan. Some of the tanks are in the United States, in Phoenix, Arizona, for example. So how many tanks do we have? That's one question. How many tanks can we get to an emergency in Germany? That's another question altogether. And so when people start to ask what appear to be simple questions, because the data is scattered all over creation, this is how you end up with lots of different answers. And so data warehouse was when you talk about believability of data, what data warehouse does when you build your data warehouse properly is data warehouse allows you to get a believable, cogent answer as to what you're talking about.
We have a couple other people chiming in here. Umar says hello from Pakistan. Welcome, Umar. Good to have you. And then Ramona friend of the show and former guest, Ramona, and this is a kind of a rhetorical question, but she says, so corporations don't listen to their customers and there is no believability in data. What else could go wrong?
Oh, what else? Ramona and I have talked on numerous occasions, and what else can go wrong? Do you have a day for this show? Because we could talk for a day. Okay, let me give you the big picture. What's going on here is the industry that we live and work in is a very immature industry. Now, that's not a pejorative statement, because if you compare the IT industry to, say, medicine, to engineering, to accounting, these other professions have been around for millennium. That we're told that the hieroglyphics on the walls of the pyramids are some accountant talking about how much grain is owed to Pharaoh. And if you go to Rome, they have walls in Rome that were designed by an engineer 2,000 years ago. So, and medicine. I was just recently, 2 weeks ago, in Chile. In Chile, they found skulls of people that are 10,000 years old that were opened to relieve the pressure in the skull. So medicine has been around for a long, long time. Our profession has been around since 1960 or thereabouts, maybe 55. It has not been around for 100 years. And so one of the reasons why there's so many challenges and problems with our industry is a very immature industry. It's simply a statement of historical fact. I'm not making an argument. It's simply the truth. And so the manifestations that we see of all of the problems that we have, not all of them, but the majority of the problems we have are manifestations of the immaturity of the IT industry. Now, what can go wrong? If I had one thing to name that needs to be fixed, and I'm certainly not in a position to fix it, but I don't know if you're aware of this, but for years and years, vendors have been calling the shots. Vendors tell the IT department what to do. Now, in the very early days, that was actually a good thing. We needed vendors to educate the people that they were working with as to what the possibilities were. However, the vendors quickly found out that, gee, I'm calling the shots here. Instead of giving just advice, I'm going to start to sell my product. And once the vendors crossed that line, all kinds of bad things happened in our industry. So there are other things that are wrong. The universities, I'm not enamored of the education system we have. Honest to God, we've got people that know how to, have just learned how to program in Python, that think they should be designing an LLM. I mean, give me a break. And universities are good for teaching basic skills, but in terms of architectural skills and understanding things like that, universities have done a very, very poor job. But again, that's all having to do with the immaturity of our industry.
Bill, you could not have teed up this question any better, and I swear this was not a plant, but Syed asks, what advice do you have for university instructors like me teaching data warehousing to the next generation in the era of AI and big data?
Do you know how people, I can't talk about all people, because I certainly don't know all people, but most people, and certainly myself, learn, they do need book learning. But the real teacher out there is experience and making mistakes. So go build yourself a data warehouse and watch it fail. And that's going to teach you more than anything a university can do. So if I were, and again, I'm not in the university environment. They kicked me out years ago. They actually really did kick me out. The thing that I've seen that people learn the most from is trying to do something, making a mistake, and learning from that mistake. That's how people learn.
Awesome. So another Ramona in response says, immature and acting as the wisest. I did want to return to that idea for a second. You posted recently on LinkedIn that in the data industry, we do a terrible job of understanding and honoring the pioneers of our industry. Do you think that's part of or a sign of the immaturity of the industry? And how can we do better at that?
Absolutely. That once upon a time, in the very early days, anything that was new was selling. It had to be new, and if it was old, it was dirty and bad, and get rid of it. And I have to tell you, I'll tell you what talk about irritating me. I was at a conference a while back, and I was sitting at a table with about 8 or 10 other people from our industry, experienced people that should have been informed. And I mentioned that Ed Jordan had just died, and not one person at that table knew who Ed Jordan was. And then I mentioned Gene Amdahl, and they didn't know who Gene Amdahl was. And I thought, this is ridiculous. Gene Amdahl has personally had more of an impact on our industry than any person I can think of. And I don't know if you want to get into what Gene Amdahl did, but I mean, he had an enormous impact. There wouldn't be an internet. There wouldn't be PDF. There wouldn't be the things there wouldn't be in our industry. All go back directly to the contributions that Gene Amdahl made. Ed Jordan was another one. Grace Hopper was another one. And it's pathetic that our industry, we try, when one of our founders passes away, we try to put them in an unmarked grave before their body is even cold. I mean, and I find that to be appalling. But I understand how it happened. It happened because once upon a time, if it was old, it was bad. And so we don't need to understand Gene Amdahl because he's an old guy. Gene Amdahl is no longer living, but we can forget him and the other pioneers. Alan Turing, Charles Babbage, Ada Lovelace. All of these people had an important, very, very dynamic, important, formative role to play, and people don't even know who these people are or what they did.
It is crazy to me. We do a segment on this show. Usually, we didn't do it today, where we do a quick segment at the beginning where we highlight the career of a pioneer of data and kind of talk about what they did. I think it was inspired, I think, by your comment. I read that on LinkedIn and I said, oh, like maybe I could do a little bit Eric and I could do a little bit to try to fix this.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for doing that.
We're doing our best here, man.
Yeah.
So a couple other questions we want to get to. Let's go with, so this one from a LinkedIn user, he says, hello, Bill, it's an honor to hear from you. Could you share your thoughts on the role of a semantic layer in a data warehouse?
Yes and no. From the standpoint of the semantic layer being I'm going to try to phrase this politely, being misused for something that it shouldn't have been used for. I'm not a fan of the semantic layer. However, in terms of theory of what can a semantic layer do for you, I'm a big fan of that. So would I go out and buy stock in a company that does semantic layer technology now? No, I wouldn't. Would I look at technology and take technology seriously that is working with semantic layer? Yes, I would certainly do that. So I hate to give you a confused, mixed answer, but you asked the question, I'll give you the best answer I can.
And then we have this question here again from Saeed. He asks, how do you see the role of the traditional enterprise data warehouse evolving in the age of lake houses and real-time analytics?
Okay, number one, there is not going to be a day when we don't need a traditional data warehouse. Why? Because data warehouse allows the corporation to truly understand enterprise data. You tell me that you don't want, your corporation doesn't want to understand enterprise data, then your people in finance, marketing, accounting, sales are going to be screwed. You're always going to need a traditional enterprise data warehouse as long as you have a corporation that wants to know what it's doing. However, the whole notion of data warehousing, the notion of believability of data, which is really at the foundation of what a data warehouse is, the whole notion of believability of data is now extending well beyond structured classical enterprise-wide data. We have the whole notion of text, of being able to go into text and start to deal with it. We have the notion of chat GPT and generative AI. It's kind of interesting. I was talking with a wonderful lady that I work with named Shweta Shaw. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but Shweta was saying, gee, Bill, people are putting all of this emphasis on generative AI, but they're not putting any emphasis onto the quality of the data that they're operating on. And he says that is a strategic mistake being made by generative AI. And I happen to fully agree with her. So the data warehouse has extended from the notion of believability into other forms of data. I have to tell you, I was horrified to see what the people that put data lake. Now, let me be clear. In my mind, there's a difference between a data lake and a data lake house. A data lake house has infrastructure and structure behind it. A data lake was a very poorly thought out idea about, well, let's just take some data, throw it over onto a file over here, and hope people can come along and make sense of it. That idea hurt our industry. It did not move our industry forward. And I talk to a lot of people in a lot of countries on a regular basis, and I've not heard one person with a mature data lake come along and say, gee, this is wonderful. Everybody. Now, I've had people that say, gee, we've had a data lake for 3 months' time, and it's wonderful. Oh, okay, come back a year from now and tell me how your feelings are a year from now. But the data lake was a very poor idea, but the data lake house, as far as I can tell, having structure around it is a good idea. But there's a lot more than just the data lake house that's going on. So anyway, data warehousing has evolved from structured systems. I say evolved from. When I say evolved, I don't mean we have left data warehouse. We have, because we still have very much a need for a classical data warehouse for our structured enterprise data.
Gotcha. All right, so we got another question, follow-up question from earlier. We talked about semantic layers. Satchar's asking, all right, so what is your definition of a semantic layer?
Okay, let me preface this by saying I am not an expert. The semantic layer in our industry came along as another silver bullet that was supposed to solve wonderful things. The semantic layer came from the foundation of natural language processing. Has anybody seen natural language processing work? We've seen so many corporations plunge into NLP, spend huge amounts of money from it, and we call it getting lost in the NLP forest because people go into it and never come out with anything positive. So semantic layer was a result of the work done for NLP. Now, if you want to get into NLP and how what its shortfallings are, again, if you have a week, I can take you down that road. But the fact that they tried to use the semantic layer to somehow productize NLP, it was a dead duck from day one. However, are semantics important? Semantics, it's interesting. Semantic layer to me is the silver bullet that was generated by the creation of or from the creation of natural language processing. Does that mean that semantics aren't important? And the answer is semantics are important, but they're different from the semantic layer. Semantics are important. Let me go off on a little tangent here that I hope helps explain that. We learned a long time ago that, or I think we learned, or some people learned, I shouldn't say we learned, some people learned a long time ago that in order to be able to understand data at the enterprise level, you had to have a data model. That one way or the other, there had to be some way to talk about a cohesive way to structure and organize all of these applications that were scattered all over the corporation. And the best way to do that is to do something called a data model. So the whole idea of a data model is really nothing more than a semantic description of enterprise data. However, when we get off into the world of text, we find that we need the same sort of thing. We need a data model for text, except that if we try to go into text with the notions of a data model as it's known for enterprise-wide data, we find it's a failure, that the techniques of data modeling for enterprise-wide data are very different from the techniques of modeling for textual data. In textual data, the data model looks like a taxonomy or an ontology or other constructs such as that, chunks of text rather than the text itself. And so, the semantic component of text and language, we still need the semantics, but they're very different from the semantics that you find in a data model. So that's my best. And again, I'm not an expert on the semantic layer. I was with a project once. We tried to make NLP work. We tried to make our understanding of semantic layer work, and we gave up on it. And I can't tell you the number of corporations. I'm going to go ahead and mention names. This is public knowledge. You can look this up on the internet. But once upon a time, IBM Corporation had something called Watson. And Watson was the latest vision of what you can do with the semantic layer. If you want to find out about the success of Watson, take a look. And again, this is public knowledge. I'm not saying anything that you can't find on the internet. Take a look at Anderson Cancer Clinic and IBM Watson and find out what Anderson Cancer Clinic experienced with Watson. And it's reputed, I'm not sure about these numbers, but I've heard something like $100 million was spent with IBM on Watson before Anderson Cancer Clinic threw the whole thing away. And if you can imagine what $100 million could have done for cancer research, you doing real research rather than going off on a wild goose chase. Again, the words I'm saying could be considered to be libelous words. That's that you can find it all on the internet. Don't take my word for it. Go look it up yourself.
Yeah, Bill, I was working closely with IBM at the time when all that happened. And so I recall to back you up, yeah, you can Google this and you'll read all about it. We have a question. There's tons of questions coming in here, so really good ones. We're not going to be able to get to them all, unfortunately. We have about 12 minutes left. Before we get into the next question, we do have to thank our sponsor real quick, Good Data. Good Data is the leading embedded analytics and AI platform. Check them out on the Gartner Magic Quadrant. This is the platform for when you are trying to build the right AI and analytics experience for your customers. So this is not your generic BI tool. This is really more of an engineering analytics toolkit that you can use to deliver the exact experience your customers need. So check them out at gooddata.com and download your complimentary copy of the Gartner Magic Quadrant at the link on the screen. And thank you to Good Data for sponsoring the show. Okay. So this is coming from Corinne on Substack. If you don't know, we do have a Substack. You can follow us there with lots of content. But I wanted to make sure to ask you this one because it relates to the textual warehouse. So Corinne asks, if you need to retain for a very long time and find different file formats, PDF, MS files, geospatial, can a textual warehouse and a catalog help? And how is a textual warehouse different from using a lakehouse for that type of use case?
A textual warehouse has a lot of different uses, a lot of important uses. The main use probably has not much to do with what you're envisioning at. When I think of a textual warehouse, I think of really a massive catalog system for the documents in the corporation, the documents that haven't been computerized. So we worked with, a while back, a large oil company. The large oil company has lots and lots of oil wells, and each oil well had its own collection of documents about pumps, documents about pipes, documents about drilling, all kinds of things. And whenever that company got a note from a manufacturer, there's been a recall, there's been a readjustment on our product, the corporation faced a really difficult problem. They had to now go manually search through thousands and tens of thousands of documents to see what was relevant to what the company had received information about. So when I think of a textual warehouse, I think of a card catalog system that you would find in your library. When you go to a library, when you look for a book, you don't go to the stacks. If you do, you could be looking for a long, long time. What you do is you go look at the card catalog, and the card catalog then, in an efficient fashion, directs you to where the stacks in the stacks you should go. It's the index for the books in the library. Well, I think of the textual warehouse as the index to the documents that are in your corporation. And when I think of the textual warehouse, I don't think of documents necessarily that have ever been computerized in any form. I think of the documents as they exist in a raw form. So I understand your question. Can a textual warehouse be applicable to a lake house or a data lake? The answer is yes, of course it could. But then again, there are a lot of uses and perspectives on how it can be used as well. So I look at it a little bit differently than I believe the way you're looking at it at.
Gotcha. All right, we've got a lot more questions. We'll try to get as many as we can in before the end. So Andrew has, so when companies merge, there's often a clash of data models as an attempt is made to reconcile different models, approaches, and cultures around data. Is there a better way, or are there practices we can adopt to make this process run more smoothly?
Well, we could all go back to the beginning and start all over again, but I don't think that's a very realistic solution. I don't have any good answer for this question. You got to tough it out, and I mean I hate to say it. I do not have a good answer to the question. So I'm just going to say, sorry, no dice.
That's how you can tell Bill is real and not AI, because when he doesn't know, he doesn't make it up.
I'm BI, not AI.
That's
Yeah, you're
right.
you're BI,
Bill
not
Inman.
AI. Yeah.
Bill Inman, not Alfred
It's
Inman.
good. It's good.
Uh,
All right.
why don't you read this one, Eric?
Yeah. So what do you think is the biggest challenge modern teams face when trying to integrate unstructured data into a data warehouse, and what are they still getting wrong about it?
Um, um, they're listening to vendors, and the vendors the vendors don't know how to integrate unstructured data into a data warehouse, but they want to sell products. They want to make money out of your pocketbook, and so they put together gobbledygook, sell it to you, and then let you fail. And you know what amazes me in our industry is over and over again, these vendors have purported that they have a solution. They've gone out and sold something and failed. And then next year they come around again and management buys again. You would think that management would learn that when somebody has sold you a sack of no good stuff, I won't use the word commonly used in our industry, a sack of bad stuff, that they would say, wait a minute, I just got through spending $100 million with that vendor. Am I going to spend another $100 million? Maybe can't I at least find a different vendor? But our industry does not learn from its mistakes. And again, that's part of the immaturity of our industry. But anyway, the biggest problem that we have is we listen to the cockamamie schemes that the vendors will sell you to do this kind of thing. If you're really interested in doing this kind of thing, give me a call and I can privately be happy to tell you all kinds of things you need to know.
All right, and we have a question here from Dimeji. He asks, can you give us a history lesson from your career perspective on data technologies that you felt were all hype?
Oh God, that I can probably write a book on that. Big data. You can't even find big data anymore. Data scientists. Once upon a time, people were paying huge amounts of money for data scientists, and then they found out that data scientists were expensive and had a hard time producing business value. The dot-com bust. Once upon a time, if you just go .com, it's going to be great. You probably don't even remember, but case technology. Once upon a time, there was something called case technology. You can't even find case technology, but it was the rage. And our industry, in terms of silver bullets, is full of silver bullets. Some of the very early silver bullets were programming is so easy, even secretaries are going to be programming. And another one is programming is self-documenting. Another one, we should, and I never understood this one, I got to confess, we should be building programs without programmers. Now, to me, it's that's like shooting myself in the head. You should be doing programming without programmers. I never really got what that one was all about. So our industry, look up silver bullets in our industry, and you will find that there's been this long history. IBM's DB2. I remember when DB2 came out, the DB2 was going to do everything under the sun. If you just, your problems are over if you just get DB2. And boy, was that not right. So we've got, our industry got a long history of these silver bullets. Take a look up, if you're interested in research on it, look up the Gartner hype curve and look up silver bullets, and you will find a litany of cases.
All right, so we've just got a couple minutes left. Thanks for joining us today, folks. You've been an incredible audience. If this is your first time watching the Super Data Brothers show, we are here most Thursdays. We won't be here next Thursday because it's Thanksgiving. But we are here most Thursdays doing exactly this: live show, live Q&A with data thought leaders and legends like Bill, who you want to hear from. So check us out on YouTube at the URL you see there. Follow both of us on LinkedIn. Check out the Substack. We're now on TikTok, whatever that means. And so do all the stuff, click all the buttons, ring all the bells. I have to, as an influencer, I'm obligated to say that. I want to ask this last question before we're out of time. I think this is a great final question. Johannes asks, what do you believe is the single most important architectural principle that we still haven't learned about how to manage meaning, not just data, at the enterprise scale?
First off, that's a very large question. And there's no way I can even start to answer it in the time that we have. However, if there's one thing that people have not learned, and that is what is the value of context with data. Data is interesting, but data without context is like a bird that can't fly. And so we have to learn, especially as we go away from structured data into textual data and analog data, we have to learn what it means to have context, And now, that answer that I've given you is a simplistic answer. Underneath that answer is a world of other considerations. But in the time that we have, it's the best I can do.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bill. It's been awesome having you. Where can people keep up with you? Did I see that you have a Substack now?
Yeah, I just started on Substack, and I'm putting articles out there. I try to put a new article a week out there. And I do things on LinkedIn. I talk at conferences such as this all the time. The conferences that I attend, my favorite conference is in Austin, Texas, day-to-day conference. I love the people. I love the sponsor. I love Austin, Texas. That's a great place to go. Also, the books, my publisher is Technics Publications. As you mentioned, Ryan, we just had the book on the history of computing and technology, and we tried to put in a lot of other interesting stories, not technical. By the way, my co-author on the book is one of the early founders and associates of Apple Computer. Worked with Stephen Jobs, Wozniak, and in fact, he even has the first wired board of Apple I. And I told him museums are looking for that, but he has it in his garage.
Great. Well, thank you again for joining us, Bill. If you wouldn't mind just sticking around if you have time for a couple minutes after the show to
Sure.
let the local recording upload and we can debrief real quick. But thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. That was incredible.
Yeah, that was a good show.
I'm so glad he agreed to come on the show. And for those of you who, as you know, those of you who watch us regularly know that we agree with Bill's assessment of Day-to-Day Texas. If you are interested in attending Day-to-Day Texas this year, you can use the code SuperDataBrothers, all one word, to get, I can't remember if it's 20 or 30% off your ticket. But do check it out. Eric, did you know we're sponsors of Day-to-Day Texas now?
Yes. Yeah, you told me that we are officially sponsors of Day-to-Day Texas.
We are officially sponsors of Day-to-Day Texas. And we'll be there. So it's in January in Austin. Be sure to check it out. One last time, if this is your first time catching us, we are here every Thursday. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Substack, YouTube, all the places. So go ahead and do that. You've been an incredible audience. Thank you so much for Bill Inmon for coming on and sharing his wisdom. It's just incredible that we have Bill in the industry. I mean, his incredible longevity in the industry and the wisdom that he can share accumulated over all these years. There's just nobody like him. So having him on the show is a real treat. Thank you for joining us, everybody.
All right.
And until next time, we are the Super Data Brothers. Take care, everybody.
Brothers.
Bye.
Thank you.